how did you? I mean, being a single mom, and then coming out of I guess relationship was not a good relationship,
Mm,
and then coming out of that, and then having a child, and then the thing that you thought was your passion, your life, the music, the singing, that was taken away from you, and
mhm,
then all the
mhm.
medical issues that you were having with your son, and then I mean, how did you navigate through all of that? I mean, what kept you going? Because being a single mom by itself is super
Yeah,
hard. And I'm not a female, but I'm just saying I've seen
yeah,
single mothers. I mean, I have a wife and I had kids, and it was hard for both of us to take care of our kids. I can only
right.
imagine being a single mom and being able to being there for all things. So how did you survive all of that? I mean, how did you what kept you going? What kept you strong?
Um, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I, kn- if I had nothing else, I had that. I had the assurance of I will never leave you nor forsake you. None of this stuff took God by surprise.
What's up, fam? It's Todd here. Thank you for another edition of God Dreamers. Today, we're gonna have some fun. I have a guest here. There's another musician, singer, vocalist. Lately we've been doing a lot of music, and I love that. But anyway, we're gonna be going beyond just talking about. We're gonna be she's gonna be sharing a little bit about her life, some of the challenges she's faced, and how she's purpose as we speak. So, without further ado, welcome Pamela Best. How you doing today?
Hey, I am good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Yes.
So I'm changing my little ground here. So now it's nice. I'm playing producer today and host.
Ah,
so
both hats, both
so
hats.
welcome. Yeah, multitasking. So thank you first of all for being a part of God Dreamers. Definitely grateful for sharing a little bit about your life and some of the things that you're doing. Um,
Oh yeah.
I know you're from now. You have another name. I guess your professional name. You want to share a little about your professional name?
My professional name is Rare Epiphany. And it is just the word rare and the word epiphany all smashed up together. And we are in the midst of National Poetry Month. And so a lot of poets do something really crazy. We do a 30 for 30 challenge, right? So we have to write 30 poems in 30 days. And I actually did a poem yesterday about my name, and what it is that it's not
Or did you?
a moniker so far, right? So it was not meant in the beginning to be my name. It was a description of what I was. So it's about being a rare
Ah,
epiphany or a unique divine revelation. Like everybody is a rare epiphany. There's no one or nothing quite like you in the entire world, right? But it was the name that ended up sticking. So that's
yeah.
who I be and what I do and who I am and what I am.
I hear you.
So
And I
yeah.
love that name. Like when I first heard, it, I was like, wow, that's so different. But you're right, though. I mean, we're all unique, right? Right. So,
Hmm.
but I love that name. And let me share this about this young lady here. She can sing. I'm telling y'all, she can sing, not sing. She can sing.
Yeah. That's what we
And
do in the country.
hopefully yeah, I hope we can figure out a way to get you to sing a little bit today during this. Just maybe just a smidge, just a smidge.
I got you. I got you. Ask me something I don't like to do. I mean, hey, I sing. That's what we do.
So you're from Kinston? Is it Kinston, North Carolina?
Now you
Is that
talking about the
correct?
big city. Kinston is the big city next to where I'm from. I'm from LaGrange.
Okay.
LaGrange, North Carolina is between Kinston and Goldsboro. And LaGrange, we got a stoplight,
Ah,
we got a railroad track, we got one police officer. And this is how I
just
usually
one.
tell people how small my town is, right? Two things. My son's high school population is larger than the population of my hometown. And my driver's ed teacher was the mayor.
What?
I used to drive on official
Wow.
business. What? Where are we going? We're going to drop off some papers? But yes, I'm from
Wow.
LaGrange,
So you,
North Carolina.
that's hilarious talking about Kansas, the big city. Wow. So you're, yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
guess
a
it's
big
all
city.
relative, right?
Right. Compared,
Yeah. You talking about one police officer and the
yeah.
mayor is the bus driver. No, I mean,
It used to
yeah,
be a
because
little house next to the railroad track that looked like a an old school it was a little bit larger than a phone booth. So it could fit two people because we used to have two police officers and that's where they met in that little building next to the railroad track.
wow, that's
Oh yeah.
crazy. So how'd you end up in Atlanta, coming from a small
Okay.
town? I would imagine too that Atlanta was probably. I'm not sure if you came directly to Atlanta from Lagrange, but I mean, I would
No,
imagine
kind of
it
went.
was probably a culture shock to transition
Yeah,
from that.
I did the whole thing. Like, okay, so when I decided I was going to go to college, I tested out a bunch of places. So Princeton, and then ended up at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And then from there, because I didn't want to do real life right then, I went to Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama. While I was at Oakwood University, it was right before my graduation was supposed to have been the year that the Olympics was here, 96. Um,
Hmm.
and I was a broadcast media communications major, and we were invited to participate in the host broadcast training program. And so myself and my roommate came to Atlanta. We co-opted in Atlanta, working for a host broadcast training program in conjunction with NBC to do all of the various and sundry things for the Olympics. So I did a lot of script writing. I did editing. I worked at editing bay from the truck for basketball, for Velodrome, ran audio cables.
Wow.
So that's kind of how I ended up in Atlanta. So once the Olympics were over, while I was doing that, I was kind of scouting the area. I got a job I got an internship first at a radio station here. And then they offered me a job. So once the Olympics were over, I was supposed to be a graduating senior, and technically, you couldn't be a graduating senior doing this program. So I dropped a class. I came, finished the program, went back 2 days before graduation, clept a class so I could still march that year. So I went ahead and graduated and then came back and started working at the radio station here in Atlanta. And I've been here ever since. So moved here in 95 to get prepped for 96 Olympics, worked the Olympics, and just never left.
So you got into Atlanta, and so how has your life changed since the first coming here? Now you have a son, right?
Yes, I have a son. He is 17
Yeah.
years old, graduating this year. Yeah. Yeah, life has a way of lifing. Um, I when I came to Atlanta, I was a kid. I don't think I recognized that I was a kid. Like, I was 20, I was like 22, 21, somewhere in there. Yeah, I'm 21. Mm-mm-mm. Um, and working at the radio station afforded me the opportunity to meet a lot of musicians and a lot of people. I worked at a gospel radio station. Um, I don't even know if it's still in existence. It was WTJH, the Joy House, and then got a chance to work as a what is the word? The word flew out of my brain when I thought of it. Um, a substitute. So whenever somebody was out, I would be like somebody they call. So at WJZZ at the jazz
Hmm.
station, at WCLK, or at any of the stations around, I would do that. And I was also a session singer for most of the studios in Atlanta. So I would get the 2 a.m., 3 a.m. call where it's like, hey, we need you to come in the studio and do XYZ. And I could because I was 22 years old and I have any responsibilities. So um, I ended up, when I was at WTJH, I met a guy who worked there at the time. He worked at WAOK, Rodale Lewis. His wife worked at the
Hey, Lewis.
station I
Oh,
was
man.
at. And so she was like, hey, my husband's trying to put together a group. You want to be a part of it? And I'm like, sure. So met up with Rodale. My station manager at the time was Brian Clay. And we were uh, we were friends. And then he was like, "Oh, we got this other guy named Larry Emerson." And then there was this kid. I mean, he was like 11, 12 years old, named Will Burns. I think his name is Will Donnie Burns. Phenom on drums. So he was our drummer. So we were Rodell Lewis and Company, because, and it was the 90s, everybody was in Company. So it was
Mhm.
Rodell Lewis and Company, and I was a background singer. I'm a flautist, so I play flute, background, all this stuff with Rodell. And his brother Steve Lewis played guitar. And it was like, okay, we're all doing our thing, going everywhere. Well, as groups and people and personalities will go, um, there became a riff in this group. And so Rodell, after we finished recording his album, we kind of went our separate ways. But the band was like, well, we still want to do this, right? We want to do it. And who are we going to be? So we were like, everywhere we went, we tried to change our name to something else, but everybody recognized us from Rodell Lewis and Company. So they were like, oh, that's Company from Rodell Lewis and Company. So we stayed Company, but we changed the spelling to
Company what?
Kompani. So we were Kompani. We were Company, or as people would mispronounce it, Compani. But we were Company, and that's what we ended up doing. We were a gospel jazz
Wow.
group. I went from background singer to lead singer, and for years traveled, did festivals, Riverbend, Bayfest, Montreux, Atlanta Jazz, had a ball, met some of the most amazing musicians in the world, got a chance to open for people and sing with people, opening for Stanley Clark and Foreplay, and
Wow.
Wayman Tisdale, and Huge Groove, Alex Bouillon, and so all you just got an opportunity. Rochelle Farrell, Joe Sample, just meeting
Wow.
all of these people and getting to sit, and to have someone like a Dave Sanborn call the venue and say, "Hey, the group that opened last time, I'm gonna need them to open for me again." To get the repeats. And then I think we've opened for him three or
Wow.
four times, but it was just like, ah. And I think I was too focused in the moment to really recognize how awesome an opportunity it was. It was really awesome to get the
Mhm.
opportunity to meet these people, to learn what to and what not to do. Some of the people I wish I hadn't met, because I love their music, but their whole persona turned me all the way off. People who were just attitudinal for absolutely no reason, who treated
What?
people they felt were beneath them like dirt. And I'm like, they trying to make you sound good. Like, why would you talk crazy to the sound people? Like, they're working to try to do this sound check to make you sound great,
Yeah.
but you're just talking to them like they're nothing, like they're dirt. And I couldn't stand it. So I fell out of fandom with a lot of people. Um, Fell deeper into Phantom with some other people. Traveled, worked, did all that kind of good stuff, and in the off season, you do what musicians and stuff do. You do jobs, temp jobs, everything until it's time to get back on the road. Ended up meeting a musician at the time named Tony Thompson. He is a director for Atlanta's Chorale New Creation. All around great vocal coach, one of the top vocal coaches in the city, and started singing with a group he had. met a guy named Jamez Rogers, ended up being cast for a play. I went to be a background, one of the pit singers for a play. So I went to audition for
Hmm.
the pit singer thing. And as a pit singer, you always have to understudy somebody in the play, just in case somebody, falls off a cliff. Anything could happen. And so I went to read for to understudy the lead of the stage play we were traveling with, and he ended up giving me the role. And I was like, okay. So
Wow.
I starred in this play called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places, and we toured the country doing this play. And then I started doing, a bunch of stage plays, and ended up meeting some people at a studio through that connection. Tribe Records was doing a remake of Sounds of Blackness, Be Optimistic. And so got called in to do background vocals for Ann Nesby for that project. And it just kind of went all over the place. But company was cool. It's just that some of the business wasn't right. And sometimes it
Yeah.
would be like, okay, get the, you get the contracts, get the money, and everybody would get paid except me. And it would be like, oh yeah, we got you, we got you. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. I think finally it was 2003 ish. Yeah, 2003. I didn't find out till early 2004. So I was dating my musical director and got pregnant. And yeah, all of that came crashing down.
Mm.
Um, and it
Wow.
got to the point where I stayed with the band for as long as I possibly could. Because for me, I had invested so much in this band, and I felt like I don't want to let it go. It's just as much my band as it is his, right? I just didn't want to let it go. I was holding on, but um, after I had my son, he decided he wanted to show up early. He was supposed to have been a late September baby. He was a late August baby, um, and I literally was just going through. I was just losing it. So I was in my room one day, and I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I walked into my living room, and it's rare for me to ever watch TV. Like, I don't even have a TV in here. There's a TV in my son's room because he plays games on it, but I'm not a TV person. I don't watch TV. It's weird.
Mhm.
I worked in TV, but don't watch it. And TD Jakes was on my TV, and I was looked, and he said, because I was trying to get out of this relationship. I needed to get out of the relationship. I needed to get out of the band. I couldn't. I couldn't let it go. And so when I turned up the sound on the TV, TD Jake said, because I had asked a friend to pray for me, just pray for me. And TD Jake said, you know what our problem is? We pray over what old folk used to cast out. You can't pray over a demon. You cast that out. You let that go.
Wow.
And I was like,
Wow.
hmm. I said, I get it. I hear you. So I said, I'm done. It was a civil kind of, hey, look, I can't do this. I committed to do this, next couple of gigs. I will do those 2 gigs. Um, but after that, I, I got to let it go. And I let go of him, and I let go of the band. And I had no clue what I was going to do. I was like, I have no idea what I was gonna do. I had my regular job, and I just kept working my day job and my regular job, and I worked in Alpharetta. Coming from where I live, it was about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on traffic, one way.
Mhm.
Um, and just going back and forth to work and struggling, just struggling, but holding on. I was like, um,
Yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah.
figure this out. Struggled for a long time, to the point of where I negotiated how life would look in the house. I had a baby, so in the summer I needed my AC, so I would pay my light bill and I would let them turn off the gas. And then when we got to winter,
Wow.
I would pay up the light bill, I pay up the gas bill and let them turn
Mm.
the electricity off. And he always thought it was the most fun thing to camp out in the living room with the flashlights. And I would charge up my laptop at work, and we would come home and we would eat cereal and fruit and watch DVDs on the laptop under our tent with a flashlight.
Wow.
And he thought it was the most fun ever. He had no idea the lights was off. Like, he had no idea we didn't have any
Wow.
electricity. Um, he just thought it was fun, right? We spent a lot of time outdoors. He was not a child that grew up watching TV, so we don't really watch TV. We watch
Mhm.
movies every now and then, but he's a reader because I was a reader. I still am a reader. And so we would buy tons and tons and tons of books. Um, I found out when he was about two and a half that he's autistic and high functioning, super high IQ, insanely smart, but socially not with it. He ain't really a human being
Mhm.
type person. Um, but we watched, we would read all these books. And one day I went, he was 3 years old, and he was like, Mommy, I'm gonna read this book to you. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'm trying to, get him in the tub. You can read to me after you get out of the tub. And he was like, but I know your name. I can spell your name. And I was like, okay, great. So we used to have the soap chalk. And he had the chalk and he wrote on the wall of the tub, Mommy. Mommy. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. He's 3, right? And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then he said, I'm gonna read this book. And he started reading
Wow.
this book to me. And I was like, well, we've read the book before. Maybe he's just kind of memorized the book, right? He's read this book before. He
Yeah.
knows what it says. And so I took the book and then I gave him some foreign book that he'd never seen before. It's probably one of my books. And he said, and he started reading the book. And I was like,
What?
sir, when did we learn to read? And he said, I can read the books, Mommy. Like, what's wrong with you? I can read. I don't know what you're talking about. I read. That's what I do. I said, okay, great. So he's always been an avid reader. At like he consumes books very quickly. So a lot of my money went towards books for him. But I have
That's
been a
awesome.
single mother in every single iteration of the word. It's me, solo dolo. That's it. But what I had to learn through the whole process was I kept thinking I couldn't do anything else because I didn't have the band. I didn't have, my musical director who handled the business for the band. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. But it wasn't until I started levying the fact that aside from singing, I'm a poet, and open mic venues were everywhere. I knew a lot of poets, a lot of poets knew me. So it was kind of my way of writing and getting things out and going out to perform, um, and going to a lot of family friendly places where I could take him with me, um, and built a family in that kind of poetry community. And
Yeah.
it was where I could lean. I was pulled in to be a part of a group called the Queens of Poetry. We toured around, did shows for V103 and Joyce Littell, put together a compilation book of poetry with Joyce, um, Live Poet Society, did some shows for them, just kind of came into this whole putting 1,000 hours. I highly respect poets and poetry. Um, and so I studied it a lot before I ever stepped on a stage. I would watch them all the time and never get on stage because, I came up in the 90s with spoken word and poetry. They would boo you. Like it wasn't the friendly, everybody gets a trophy kind of scene that it
Yeah.
is now. No, they would boo you up off the
Yeah.
stage. And I was like, yeah, I don't want that to happen. So let me figure out, how to make this work. And a
Yeah.
poet by the name of John Good took me under his wing, um, kind of showed me the ropes, believed in me far more than I ever believed in myself. Um, what he has a poem called 200,000 Clark Kents. And in this poem, he just talks about how when we are kids, we tie these shirts around our necks and we're in the breeze, we are Superman, right? That we're gonna save the
Hmm.
damsel in distress, we're gonna do all this stuff. And then you grow up and you get behind these pinstripe suits that he refers to as bars. You get behind these bars
Oh
and
wow.
you get trapped in these cubicles, right? And when they tell you to think outside the box, but you sitting in a box, kind of thing. uh
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he said he ran into some friend, the guy runs into some friends who were like, like, what are you doing? He was like, well, I grew up. And they say, yeah, but what you grow up to into? It was like, you used to want to be Superman, right? And so it was a thing that
Hmm.
when he finished doing the piece, he walked over and handed me the piece. And he was like, you can't forget you used to want to be Superman, right? So you can't forego your dreams. It's not either or. You don't have to give up being an artist to be a mother. And you won't have to slight motherhood to be an artist. That you will find the balance, you will find what works. And no truer sentiments have ever been spoken. uh, I kind of found myself in performing, and my son gets the opportunity to watch me do what I do and understand that although I have a corporate job that I do every day, that I have these other things that I don't have to give up my creative being to survive,
Hmm.
right? To do all these things.
Now, how did you? I mean, being a single mom, and then coming out of I guess relationship was not a good relationship, um,
Mhm.
and then coming out of that, and then having a child, and then the thing that you thought was your passion, your life, the music, the singing, that was taken away from you, and
Mhm.
then all the
Mhm.
medical issues that you were having with your son, and then I mean, how did you navigate through all of that? I mean, what kept you going? Because being a single mom by itself is super
Yeah.
super hard. And I'm not a female, but I'm just saying I've seen
Yeah.
single mothers. I mean, I have a wife and I had kids, and it was hard for both of us to take care of our kids. I can only
Right.
imagine being a single mom and being able to being there for all things. So how did you survive all of that? I mean, how did you what kept you going? What kept you strong?
Um, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I kn- if I had nothing else, I had that. I had the assurance of I will never leave you nor forsake you. None of this stuff took God by surprise. Um, I have a very strong, prayerful family, right? And even though I was here, because my cousins and everybody else were like, "Why are you still in Atlanta? Why don't you just come home? You've got your entire family here. You've got the support system. Why don't you just come home?" But my family dynamic is one in which I have cousins who got married, got divorced, or had children and are no longer in relationship with their children's fathers, and they would be in and out of their mom's houses and all those kind of things. And for me, I'm an only child. I've always been some modicum of independent, and it truthfully just was not. My father had died by this time. My father died in 1998. Um, I had my son in 2004. My son was my responsibility. He was not my mother's responsibility. He was my responsibility. I made the choice. Um, I did. And I felt like I really needed to take care of it myself. I needed to handle it myself. Um, Learned a lot of lessons the hard way, the really hard
Yeah,
way
like many
through
of us.
that. It's like, oh, okay, all right, then you got it. Um, I have always had a problem asking people for help because I felt like I needed to handle it on my own. Um, my mother used to always teach me um, from a genuine good place, right? She meant it well. That, it was, you got to take care of stuff yourself. You got to make it happen. From the time I was like 3 or 4 years old, it was like, if you want that, you do that. You got to do XYZ. I'm not doing all this stuff for you. You got to figure out blah, blah, blah. So in my adolescent mind, that became anytime anything happens, you got to fix it. There's nobody coming to save you. There's nobody coming to rescue you. You gotta fix it. And so that became my all encompassing thought. Um, I was molested as a child by a family member from the time I was 5 to the time I was 8. And I never said anything to my parents because I felt
Oh
like I had
gosh.
to fix it. I had to fix it. I had to make it. I had to change it. I had to do something. And so what I did was I became a latchkey kid when I was 8. And my mother thought it was because my grandmother was mean to me. And I didn't tell her any different. I was just like, okay. And that's when I started staying home. I used to be at the house and I used to get home from school and I would sit in the bathroom with the door locked until it was almost time for my mom to get home. And then I would run out and try to clean up and try to get everything set because you had to have the house clean when your mama got home, everything else. But I was
Hmm.
scared that he was going to come get me. And so my mother just thought it was, why do you wait till the last minute to do stuff and all this other stuff? I didn't have the conversation with my mother until I was 23. Um,
Wow.
Sat her down and had the conversation after a lot of therapy. Um, and after my therapist saying, look, if you've ever lived in a house that has had any kind of infestation, you know what happens when you flip the light on. When you flip the light on, things scatter. She was like, you got a whole bunch of stuff infesting um, your spirit and your soul because you keep the lights off. You got to turn the light on. You got to scatter this. You got to get it out of here. And so I sat my mother down, had the conversation with her. I slept like a baby that night. She didn't sleep at all. She was sitting in the same spot when I got up in the morning that she was when I went to bed that night. Um, but I it wasn't my responsibility to carry that by myself
Yeah.
for my whole
Yeah.
life. Um, and so what made my mother a little better was she was like, then how do you associate with him? Like, how? And I was like, because forgiveness does not require you to say you're sorry. You don't have to be sorry in order for me to forgive you. Resentment
Hmm.
and grudges are like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I didn't want to live with that no more. So I'm good. I forgive you. It's not my job to punish you. God got that, and He did. Um, and so all of this independence, though, was still stuck. And so I
Yeah.
tried to do everything by myself. Um, and I had an uncle here who helped me out with so much stuff when my when Jamie was old enough to get out of the crib into a bed. I was like, I need to get a bed for him so he can get out of this crib. My uncle was like, I got it. I'm gonna get him. I got him. So these guys show up at the house with this bed. They were like, "Hey, we got a bed delivery," and I say, "Sure." They bring in a California king. I'm like, "Wait, he's a toddler." But that was how my uncle operated. Right? He was just like, "I got it. You go ahead. This bed.
That's
Okay, this is
awesome.
his forever bed. It's still in there right now." Um, but my uncle lived here. So we would go back and forth. If I was coming from Alpharetta and I was running super late, and I'd be like, "Uncle Aunt, can you pick up Jamie from school, or get him from daycare, or get him from after school care?" He was like, "I got him. I'm on my way." Um, he was probably the next best thing to daddy that I had. Loved my
Yeah.
Uncle Ant. My child loved my Uncle Ant. He was he had been an addict for years, and then he got himself clean and sober, and he was running a house in Jonesboro, um, off
Mhm.
Roxbury Lane. He had a house which was a halfway house for addicts who were coming out of NA and coming out of on campus treatment. Because one of the things he said that the biggest roadblocks they ran into, is when somebody gets clean and sober and they come out of their 12 steps and they're still working their program. In order to do things like get jobs and all that stuff, you got to have an address, and that address doesn't need to be a
Yeah,
shelter.
that's true.
Right? You got to have an address. You got to have access to be able to, like, they don't know how to do a resume. Or I don't know how to, how do I look for jobs now in this day and age? How do I do XYZ? And he was like, he wanted to provide all of the things that he never really had coming out. So he had this house called the Benevolent House. And that's where all these guys would go through. He ended up getting a second house. So this is kind of, he made sure he get up in the morning, he got their breakfast. He was like, you got to be out by XYZ time, hitting the street, trying to get jobs. He would take them to interviews, did all this kind of great stuff. The state
Yeah.
placed somebody in the facility who did not work out well. He ended up killing my uncle. Um,
Oh, no.
and it was a hot mess. And I remember getting the call and having to go there and watch them take him out of the house. And it was just, but
Oh gosh.
I've kind of felt, I got into this thing where I felt like, okay, God, look. So every time I feel like I've got something, anything, it gets snatched away, and I don't understand. I need you to make it make sense, because I'm finna lose it. And there were days, there were months, there were years when I just felt like, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
What is the point? Um, but I always got up in the morning and I always looked at, I got to take care of my child. I got to take care of Jamie, and whatever I got to sacrifice to do it, I'll do it. I didn't sing for years. Um, I didn't do poetry or anything for years. I would still write, but I didn't perform anything. I lost friends. Um, I can't even say I lost friends. I lost people that I was friends with who were not really
Mhm.
friends with me. People who were like, "Well, you didn't call me back," and I'm thinking, because I got a flip phone and I pay $10 a month to keep enough time on it in case of an emergency, so I can't sit and have phone conversations with anybody. I can't have text exchanges with anybody. It's $10. It's all I got. I'm keeping food and my lights on, or I'm keeping food and my gas on. It's gonna be one of those. But it's like I'm struggling, and people see me treading water, but nobody had a boat, a life raft, a little dinghy, a floaty, something, nothing, nobody. And so I was like, okay, fine, fine, fine. It was a long-winded lesson of God is who I depend on. Period. Um, and dealing with my son and everything going on with him was, this boy always still had a smile on his face, always still bouncing around and happy. And I was like, after everything this boy has been through, he still got joy. Why are you tripping? I had to stop and reevaluate that struggling, no real money, but my rent got paid every month. We ain't never been homeless. We always had food. There was always love. He didn't know any, he didn't love me any less because I felt like I
Mhm.
failed because I couldn't provide certain things. I had to really stop and say, you know what, God, thank you. I appreciate it because I know people who ain't got houses. I know people who don't have enough food. I thank you. I'm gonna be
Mhm.
appreciative of everything I have. And I just started writing and doing stuff again. I had friends who were like, hey, let Jamie come over for a play date and you go do whatever. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then his dad was like, he got
Mhm.
remarried. And then he was like, hey, can Jamie spend a week or two in Tennessee? Oh, okay. So it was like, okay, go. And it gave me a little time to go back to places that I remembered that I thought would have forgotten me, but they didn't. They knew who I was, they welcomed
Yeah.
me back. Um, and getting the opportunity to do shows and all these other things, and people remembering who I am and allowing me the opportunity to grow and stretch my wings a little bit, um, to really remember what I'm supposed to be doing, exploring other things, because I never thought in a million years I'd ever be a chef to do anything, because I just felt like I couldn't really cook. But what it was I am not a Southern dyed in the wool chef. So I had to I'm creative.
Yeah. Let's just briefly talk about this chefdom.
Yes. So
How
I
did
always
you
tell people,
end up being that
okay,
doing that?
it's crazy. I have a friend named Linda. Her birthday was coming up because she's awesome and everybody wanted to do something for her. Her birthday was coming up. So we were all converging together like, okay, we got to do something for Linda. We're going to do a surprise party. It's going to be music, food. It's going to be amazing. Okay, cool. Well, who's doing what? Okay, well, Pam, you find out what her favorite foods are and you'll handle the food. And I'm like, me? I can't handle music or nothing? No, we got that. Okay. I already knew what her favorite foods were. And so I was like, oh, okay. Hmm. So later on, they would tell me, oh, we thought it was just going to be something like simple. I was like, have we ever met? Have we ever met? I am probably the most extra person you have ever met in your life. Have we met? So I went to this restaurant where I want to say the place is called Papa Chow or something, but they have this soup that she loves. It's a vegetarian soup because she's vegetarian. It is really simple because I went and asked him. It's like it's not like I'm gonna open a restaurant down the street, but I need to make this because I'm broke and I can't pay you for all this soup. And he was like, "Oh, it's super simple," and he told me what to do. Bet.
What?
So I made this soup. It is a tofu soup. It is so simple. You just build a broth, a mock chicken style broth,
Hmm.
tofu, tomato, spinach. Super simple soup. It really is in the seasoning. Pooh, got that. She loves PF Chang's lettuce wraps. Okay, figure out how to make those. And because this crowd was vegetarian and meat eaters, I had to figure out how to do the chicken ones and how to do the vegetarian ones. And then I did Mongolian beef. And then I did a vegan beef and broccoli. And then did some chicken. And then a vegan teriyaki chicken. And then did all the sticky rice and the sushi and all the things. And they're looking like, we thought we were just gonna have some fried rice or some, stir fry. I was like, yeah, nah, that's not how I operate. That was the first time I'd ever cooked for a large group of people, ever. And when I did it, it was like, okay, so when my party comes around, I need you to do XYZ. And I was like, okay. And it snowballed from there to the point of where they would take me to restaurants just so they could get a dish, me try the dish so I could recreate the dish so they didn't have to go to the restaurant. And I was like, y'all are not slick. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing here. You just don't want to go to the restaurant. But being able to eat something, I identify flavors and be like, that's cardamom. That's anise. That's star anise. Oh, that's, to pinpoint ingredients and then just to get in the kitchen and play. And then with veganism, a lot of my clients are vegan, finding how to make their favorite foods, but vegan. So learning how to I make vegan lox and bagel. And when I say I make vegan lox and bagel, I mean I make my bagels from scratch. And I make my lox. I do vegan ribs, vegan oxtails, vegan chicken.
I'm about to try the oxtails.
Oh, the vegan oxtail stew is bomb. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people be like, wait, vegan oxtail. I was like, put it this way. When I made it the first time, the one of the guests was like, so how did you get the bone out of the middle of the oxtail? And I was like, that's a vegan oxtail, right? Like, that's not a real one. And she was like, but it tastes like an oxtail. I said, that's kind of the point. It should taste like an oxtail.
Oh God,
I like playing in the kitchen. I like it.
Yeah, that's cool. So we're gonna get it close here, but I wanted to before we close, I want you to sing a snippet of something so they can hear your voice. And I know it's so much more about your life, but we could be on here for hours upon hours. But before we close, I want them to get a little snippet of your voice. Or you could do a poem. So what you got? What you got for us?
I don't know. What you want? Which one you want? You want a poem? You want a song?
Give me a song. Give me a song.
Okay.
Give me a song.
Okay. From the time I was a little child, I'd always heard of you. And I'd seen with mine own eyes the wondrous things that you could do. But in spite of all I'd seen and heard, still this question came to me. Why must I suffer so if God knows what is best for me? So with everything within me, I say yes to thee, oh Lord. And even though my faith gets weak, I'm still standing on your word. So forgive me, Lord, for doubting you. Oh, in your ways I cannot see. Now I rest assured that you know what is best for me. That's my shower song. That's my every day. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing
Thank you.
your your part of your life and some of the challenges you face. And I mean, you're doing great today. I know God has kind of opened up some doors. You're a chef, and you're
Oh
still
yeah.
doing your music stuff, your poetry, you're still thriving, and even in the midst of all the challenges. So that's a blessing. And so
And
thank you
just
for so much.
celebrated
Thank you
two
so much.
years in remission. I just
Oh
celebrated my
yeah,
2 years
so
in
we didn't.
remission.
Yeah, we talk about that. Yeah, that's another thing too. You're a cancer survivor, right?
I am indeed.
Yeah. So
I
that's
am indeed.
God is good. God is
He
definitely
is
good. Boy.
so good.
Well, thanks again for hanging out with us today, and for you guys that have been watching, thank you for watching, and if you have any ideas or any thoughts about future episodes, feel free to reach out, through social media. If you like what we're doing, like it, and but definitely subscribe. I need y'all, please subscribe. I need y'all. But
Subscribe.
anyway,
Subscribe.
and I know subscribe is easy, right? Just click the button. It doesn't require a whole lot of energy. But anyway, again, Pam, for hanging out with us, and God bless you guys. Until next time. So take care. We'll see you. Peace.